Hello and welcome to the Teaching Transformations podcast, a collaboration between the Academy for Sustainable Futures and the Careers and Enterprise Service at Canterbury Christchurch University. I'm your host, Jack Swan. In this podcast, we interview lecturers and course leaders and ask them how they've managed to embed sustainability into their course and their teaching. Dr. Magz is Sustainability Lead for the School of Creative Arts and Industries. She's course leader of film, radio and TV, and also teaches digital media and PhD students. She's a practicing sound artist and audio and radio specialist. Her research spans art for the environment and expanded radio. I started off by asking Magz to tell us a little bit about what she's been teaching in these modules and how she goes about it. Right. Magz, lovely to have you with us. I'm really keen to talk to you today about how you've embedded sustainability onto your course teaching radio to students at Christchurch. So can you tell us a little bit about your course and some of the ways that you've managed to embed curriculum into the content of the course?
Yeah, I basically am course leader for film, radio and television. As you mentioned, I focus on radio myself as a specialist. Within the course, we totally embed sustainability. We do it through our sort of modules in professional perspectives. And I know you'll be speaking to Ken later about the Albert, which is a way of basically getting the students to be part of a scheme where all their programs are part of the Albert scheme, which is, the BFI run project. And Ken will go into a lot more detail about it. So within all of the modules across film, radio and TV, there are elements where it's relevant to talk about sustainability and obviously getting students to think about their final projects and thinking of which they work with me on final projects, thinking about how they can embed that into their production as well. So thinking it on a practical level, but also on a theoretical level as well, thinking about, what effect it will have if they use a certain kind of camera or location or way of transporting materials around. With radio, I often encourage students to make podcasts and programs around sustainability issues. Currently, I've got a third year working on a program about Whitstable and the awful sewage pollution that's happening. So, we're unlucky enough to be right in the heart of what's going on. So that's going to make a fantastic radio documentary about the issues that are happening locally with sewage pollution on our doorstep. So often students think about how they can be more sustainable in programs, thinking about recycling, things like that. So I really encourage people to sort of think out of the box, how they can sort of make a program that's going to encourage people to think about sustainability in some way or other.
That's really interesting, and I know there's a lot going on. Like you say, in Whitstable, met with some of the Surfers Against Sewage team from up there as well. So really interesting that you're encouraging people to lean into sustainability as a topic that they discuss in their programs. Do you also talk about the techniques? We were having a bit of a chat while we were setting up for this podcast about using egg cartons, for example, to soundproof things. Are you talking to them about sustainability and the actual design and the production side of radio as well?
Yeah, we do. And obviously radio is one of the mediums that's actually very sustainable, and it has a low carbon footprint, and is when you compare it to film, for instance. So we kind of do comparisons between the both and think about, you don't, if you're doing a radio drama, you don't need to have you just need the actors' voices. You don't need the sets. You don't need to spend more on locations, etc. So we kind of think about those kind of things, but then we just think about day-to-day things. Well, how can we recycle batteries? Make sure that we're not just using disposable batteries, that we're using recyclable ones, and just thinking about kit, looking after it so it has longevity. That's something that we think about too. Obviously, when it comes to paper now, we're not really using much. Most people are, downloading or looking at files rather than actually sharing papers, so in handouts, etc. And again, with reading, that's become very much an online pursuit rather than a physical book. Also, buying secondhand books and sharing books, that is something that we also do see.
What sort of challenges did you face embedding this kind of sustainability thinking into your course?
There were no challenges at all because everyone's really open for it. So it got to a point where it's, the students and staff are on the same page. It's not like you're preaching to to people who are converted. People are very aware of this, and I think that's something that they think about when they start studying. That it's something that's the topic of our time, isn't it? Really.
So yeah, no, you're right. That's the next question was going to be what the student response to the course has been, and it sounds like people are coming in already keen, already kind of switched onto this issue, and you're giving them that structure and guidance about how to. And just so I understand as well, are you doing this through specific learning resources or through videos and other things you're exposing them to? Like how actually are you talking to students and getting these messages across?
I think, for example, actually, so I play students a range of documentaries and podcasts across topics, and that's obviously one of the topics that comes into the different kind of genres. So, for example, really.
Right. So there's a lot that you're doing there already. Where would you want to go further? Like for you, what areas remain for improvement on your course and perhaps looking across the university as well?
Well, I think what we're doing is really working well. Obviously, there's always more you can do, and I feel like I'm also involved in sound art and sound art projects, and so I'd like to take a bit further by bringing the experimental side of sound technology into what I do. So, a project I've been working on at the moment is the Radio Air Garden. So, it's just finding the right kind of sponsors to make that happen. So, we've teamed up with gardening, sustainability, and Mums for Lungs, which is a pressure group around air pollution.
Tell me a little bit more about Radio Air Garden.
It's just a way of creating a space that's like a communal space for people to listen to radio and make pieces around around sustainability issues like air pollution, and listen to them in this particular garden that absorbs with plants that absorb pollution. So that's
Interesting. So
that's something I've been focusing on the last year. Thinking about how to make that happen in a big in a big space, a lot of footfall. So maybe the centre of the university.
So yeah, for you, it's about going beyond just the classroom itself and what's being taught there, but also starting to engage with the rest of the university community and then Canterbury and Kent more widely and engage them.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that goes, again, that's with programs we're making as well, because you're engaging with local communities about issues that they really care about and making, pushing on the pressure for things to change.
I think that's really important. And just our production here today involves a lot of different students coming in from different parts of the university. And I think that really shows the value of coming together as a community, which is something we also think about a lot in the field of sustainability, which is where do we have these resources and these talents that we can bring on. What would you say to colleagues of yours who are interested in embedding sustainability in their own courses? And I know you come into this as your school's sustainability lead, so I reckon you've got some particular thoughts, not just your own experiences, but probably stuff you've also seen elsewhere that you could advise to people.
Well, I'm very lucky within Scandi. I would say every school has already embedded, which is fantastic. So we've got brilliant projects going on with dance and gaming. Gaming have actually got an event happening in March across which is a sort of gaming challenge, a sustainability gaming challenge. People making games around the theme. So, and in photography. So really, it's not so much encouraging stuff. It's kind of making perhaps I suppose possibly getting more funding to it so we can show off what we're doing better.
Mm-hmm.
And again, in a way that we do it in a way that isn't impacting on the environment, but is actually allowing us to showcase the work in maybe disused buildings. In Canterbury, there's so many pop-ups that are happening, which is great. I'd like to see us doing an exhibition on the high street.
So for you, it's this call of let's work together. We're doing all this great work. How
Yeah.
can we come together as colleagues to really show that off and
Yeah.
continue to raise the profile of the work we're doing?
Yeah, and as colleagues, we are having those discussions. So let's see what happens.
Brilliant. All right, we'll watch this space then. Well, thanks very much, Magz. Are there any remaining things you'd have to say on the topic of sustainability or sort of any calls you'd make to colleagues or to students about this issue going forward?
I would say definitely get involved. Obviously, what you're doing in the green team is fantastic for students. It's a really good, as you can probably vouch for, it seems like a really fantastic experience, but it's also getting people to use a range of skills across media that to help push forward to bring change. So I kind of feel like when we're talking about sustainability, it's about the issues, but it's also about making it part of our lives. So it doesn't, so that it doesn't become something that is just a political agenda, that things are really changing. And I'd like to see everyone cycle to university who can.
Well, I mean, as someone who lives in Wincheap, it's a 12-minute walk for me. So I feel like I've already got that one ticked off. But yeah, we'll pass that on
Fantastic.
to everyone else. Thanks so much for your time again, Magz. Really appreciate you coming down to talk to us about what you're doing to embed sustainability into the teaching of radio. Hopefully speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much.
My thanks again to Magz for joining us and sharing her thoughts on the podcast. Thanks for joining us on the Teaching Transformations podcast. The podcast is a collaboration between the Academy for Sustainable Futures and the Careers and Enterprise Service at Canterbury Christchurch University. I've been your host, Jack Swan. Production and video editing is handled by Harry Cooper. The video version of the podcast was recorded by Harry King and Drew Shelley-Winfield. Audio design and editing is managed by Matt Crawley. Additional equipment and recording space was organised by James Sanford and Kiara Hewer. Distribution and promotion is organised by Bethany Clemson. Special thanks go to Andrew Lombard and Felicity Brambling-Wells for all their support in helping us put together this Teaching Transformations podcast.